to you, Facebook fam. Thanks for joining for your first time. I'm excited to have you here. It's going to be a good show. We're having a good discussion about ego. We're moving into the spiritual aspects of ego so we can better understand ego. So thanks for stopping by. Family. All right, so glad to be back with you for another episode of Swami Live. Sorry for the slight delay. Trying to get my life together. You know how that can be sometimes, especially getting ready for the show. So glad to have you all here. I'm excited to continue our discussion on ego as we move into looking at the ego as an identity anchor, the spiritual aspects of ego. So it's going to be exciting, a good show. Glad you can join us. We'll finish the functional based idea with the questions around assessing how we are interacting or assessing our health, if we're functioning in a healthy ego. I know y'all heard that this mic picks up everything. That's my water bottle. So if it's your first time here, the Soul Swami Live, where we discuss all things healing in various forms. This is our Tuesday night show. And we also have another show on Thursday nights, which is a spinoff. It's a book club that in an effort to allow you to connect with that childlike energy. We do all of this to create a collective energy. We talked about healing, the evolution of you becoming the best version of yourself. Healing is a communal type of activity. So we're building a community that allows us to tap into the universal energy of people evolving to becoming the best version of themselves. You can catch these shows every Tuesday and book club on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Instagram. And Instagram is back today. They've been giving us a hard time the last couple of weeks, but Today we on. So welcome back, Instagram. So glad to have you here. At the beginning of every show, we generally do a little bit of energy work. And this week we are on the heart. The heart, the heart, the heart resides right there in the center of your chest, right? So the heart chakra, the heart energy point represents your love, your compassion, your empathy, your kindness, and your feelings of acceptance of others, and particularly yourself. If you are into color therapy, the color for your heart is green. So you want to think green. You want to wear some green, eat some green. I had some kale in my pasta that I made today. Well, yesterday, a lentil and kale pasta. It was good. So that was some green, and spend some time in some green lights. So wear green, eat green, spend some time in some green lights. All those things will help activate the energy of your heart. And we know that the heart is the most magnetic organ that we have. So when you want to attract and manifest, lead with your heart. It's the most powerful one you have. If you are into aromatherapy or essential oils, you want to think rose, jasmine, geranium. All of those are good scents to activate your heart's energy. If you are into crystals and gemstones, you want to think emerald, jade, green calcite, green tourmaline, rose quartz. And surprisingly, I don't have my rose quartz on the table in front of us. It's my travel rock. So when I'm traveling around the world or wherever I'm traveling, I make sure to keep that rose quartz. And the rose quartz is still in my travel book bag, which I'm going to need next week because we're going to be on the road again for the next 2 weeks after today. So those are stones that you can think about if you are into crystals and gemstones. Those are stones that help activate the energy of your heart. Again, it's the most magnetic organ you have. It is the magnetic field is 50 times larger than the next one, which is your brain, and 5,000 times more magnetic, more powerful. So your heart is the most magnetic organ that we have. So lead with that. The next thing we do is a little bit of sound therapy. I'm going to play the bowl, and I brought my circle rain stick back out. So we're going to give it another try. After we do the sound, we're going to do some breath work and affirmations, and then we're going to get started with the show. So during this time, it is the time for you to be able to shift energies, relax, rid yourself of the stresses of the day, and get yourself in a comfortable position to be able to enjoy the show, receive something, and give. If you ever feeling good, hit the link. It should be in the description or somewhere in the chat. The link will allow you to possibly join the show for a live energy reading, which is always a benefit, a beautiful thing to experience. We haven't done one in a while, so I might need to put some efforts into pushing the live energy readings a little bit more so we can have one. It's been a minute. So again, during this time, you just relax, shift energy, and get ready for a good show. family. Take a deep breath and release. The next thing we will do is our breath work, breathing exercise. My spirit called for 505. So 505 is a new one we started last week. If you are unfamiliar with breathing exercises, the number tells you how long to inhale, how long to hold your breath, and then how long to exhale. So with 505, we will inhale for 5 seconds, hold for 0, and release for another 5 seconds. But during this time, all you really have to do is just listen to the sound of my voice, and I will guide you through this breathing exercise. On the count of 3, family, we will start with 505. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 0. Release 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 0. Release 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe in 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 0. Release 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last time, family. Breathe in 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold 0. Release 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Next, I want you to repeat these affirmations after me. They are affirmations that you want to incorporate into your life. They are things that you can say to help stabilize your emotions in various situations, to remind yourself of your power, your worthiness, your value, and anything and something that can definitely activate your... Hey, Ivy, thanks. I seen you getting swole. I'm so proud of your dedication and your commitment to yourself. That is a great thing. And we definitely still need to connect a little bit, so I'll reach out. But these affirmations are exactly what they are, to affirm who you are. And all you got to do is just repeat after me and then incorporate them into your daily life to help affirm who you are. These are heart affirmations. You heard me. I thought you was gliding by. Hey, I like the way your names show up. You the only one that shows up. Everybody else on Facebook, when they talk, their name shows up blue. But yours the only one that shows up yellow. The first person I've ever seen with the yellow. And yours is it. So thanks as always. You know, you a valued member of the Soul Family. All right, so again, repeat after me with these heart affirmations. I love myself and others. I deserve to be loved. I forgive others easily. My heart is fully open, loving, and pure. I follow the voice of my heart. I love myself and others. I deserve to be loved. I forgive others easily. My heart is fully open, loving, and pure. And I follow the voice of my heart. All right, family. With that, we can move into the show. Showtime. Showtime. All right, so okay. Hey, that's it. I knew something was fishy. I don't always see this computer screen so clearly when I switch cameras, but it was like the whole half the screen was that computer screen, but that ain't how we rolling. So, all right. So this is your weekly reminder, boop 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 doop boop, that you can invest in yourself and support the channel by purchasing the 7 Spaces of Healing. They are an excellent starting point, foundational guidance to help you conceptualize 7 spaces that you need to cultivate within yourself and ensure that you are a part of through your evolution journey. A space for love, a space for healing, a space for solitude, a space for trust, a space for risk without judgment, a space for accountability, and a space for forgiveness. You can purchase this book in ebook or softback, which is an inside joke for us, softback on Amazon now. So do yourself a favor. Get started in your evolution. Get these 7 spaces for yourself. All right. So let's get this party started. General conversation, man. This week, since the last Tuesday show, has been pretty cool. I wound up getting, by the luck of the draw, being invited by one of the Soul family to some Erykah Badu event, right? It's some R&B Fridays or something like that. I'm not sure. But the focal point was about Erykah Badu. Okay, cool. Let me cut that down because my phone is going ham today. It was about Erykah Badu. And the irony between that was Erykah Badu, her concert in Charlotte like 3 years ago it signals the start of this new evolution, this second phase of healing or reshaping my spiritual self. It started with an Erykah Badu concert. Went to the concert. After that, I took Reiki, and fast forward to here we are. So it was just kind of sobering to be at this Erykah Badu event again, right? Now, the ironic thing about this is I went with some soul family, and I was glad to be there with them because they honestly create a safe space for me to practice dating again, right? So I've said that I want to take dating seriously, and I'm trying to be more serious about it. I'm in a space where I'm fully vulnerable, open. What does it say? My heart is open, loving, and pure. I'm in that space, right? So I haven't taken dating seriously. That doesn't mean that I haven't dated. It's just that I have not taken... Like, dating has changed, right? And it's been easier. So over the last couple of years, the last bunch of years, honestly, it's been easier to just connect with a girl and do something meaningless than to actually be thoughtful in my process of dating. So I was glad to be out there with my family. They give me an opportunity to be able to practice my skills without having to practice on someone that doesn't know me better, right? That doesn't know that I'm nervous or that I'm rusty or that I'm just going through this process again. So glad to be out with them. Hey Toddy, thanks for joining. I was wondering if you was gonna be here, if you had a softy ball, but I think you told me softy ball was over. Again, I call it softy ball for those who don't know. It's because it's softball and t-ball put together. I don't know. They're blurring the lines. I guess at that age group, softball and t-ball on the same team. So I just call it softy ball. And yeah, Toddy is coach softy balls. All right. The other thing that it allows me to do is with this new sobriety, like not necessarily drinking, it really allows people watching has changed tremendously, right? So I've said I've been noticing that it changed, and I've said I see why they call alcohol spirits because it changed people. But at this Erykah Badu Jones, it really kind of solidified the change, right? It changes everybody, right? I mean, I was seeing people in two main ways that I wind up seeing that alcohol changes us. Is one, loss of self-awareness. We don't know what's going on around us. We don't know what's happening. We just don't know how we are perceived or how we're moving. And sometimes we don't even care. And then the other way is we can become very self-involved, self-absorbed, that we don't care about nobody else that's around us. We just care about ourselves and whatever we're doing. Now, that can be a good or bad thing, right? So it's not judgment on if it's good or bad. It's just discussions on the things that I noticed and how alcohol really does change who we are. So I said I had to say, and I say it again, that I understand why spirits. I understand it so much so that I'm moving beyond this idea that we say drunk man's tongue is a sober man's mind. That idea kind of says that you're just saying this stuff, that this is what you think when you're sober. And the drunkenness, the alcohol takes away your inhibitions, so it allows you to be more comfortable with saying things that you would never say sober, right? But as I'm noticing that alcohol changes people, I'm moving away from the truth of that idea being truth, right? Because they call it spirits for a reason, and it changes people so much. It's levels to the energy that invades their body, right? And I'm fully aware that some of the things that they say in that drunk tongue is not what they really think, sober or drunk. It is the alcohol speaking for them, the spirit of the alcohol speaking for them, right? And that was amazing to necessarily see because, again, I was a person that every time I went out to vent like that, I drank. And I never thought that I would be different. But now that I'm looking at going out, because this was at a bar and not necessarily drinking, I told you, I noticed all the people who don't drink now, and I notice all the ways that drinking does change who we are fundamentally. It's something like something kind of takes over us, and sometimes it makes us tolerable, and sometimes it makes us intolerable. Okay, so all of that to say that I'm learning a lot in this new process, and I like to share that with the family. Then the other thing that I wanted to say, which is very interesting to me too, is I have to give the best rebranding award to glasses, right? I don't know where I was or what I was doing as glasses has changed itself into somewhat of a sex symbol. Like, people think glasses are sexy now, which is a huge difference for me because when I was a kid, you wore glasses, you was just four-eyed, and they treat you like something was wrong with you. So seeing this, and it's funny because I've seen dudes talk about dating girls with glasses and what they thought about them, their attractiveness, their gentleness, or whatever they've noticed about girls with glasses. And I kind of understood that because the majority of women I've dated wore glasses or need to wear glasses, right? They need to have glasses and they just don't. And let me recognize how many people just be living life as an adult in a blur because they don't want to get glasses based on that old concept. So I knew dudes were talking about it a little differently, but then I saw this video of this dude, and he was just, I don't know, as I start exercising more, people working out and stuff like that just winds up showing up on my timeline, and it'd be wild. So I seen this dude who was flexing, and I go to the comments, and one of the comments is like, ooh, and the glasses set it off. And I'm like, what happened? When did glasses become signs of a sex symbol? I don't know where I've been, but I got to give it up, right? Glasses are the new sex symbol. So maybe that's why I'm going to keep wearing mine too, right? And I also had to recognize that I'm turning into that guy. So I updated my watch, right? I got the new, whatever, Samsung Watch 8 Classic or whatever. I do like it compared. I went from the 5 to the 8. So I do like it because it has some features that I really wanted for myself as I'm working on this health journey in a very different way than I've ever done. And I recognize that I'm really turning into that guy, not the guy that kind of pushes his beliefs on other people, because I don't really care what you eat as long as you respect what I eat. You know what I mean? And I've always been like that, right? But now I'm turning into the guy where I'm keeping track of my meals, the calories, where I'm getting the calories from. I'm low-key becoming that guy. And I remember there was a point in my life where that guy seemed aggravating. And a lot of times he was, as the guy that's trying to push his way of life on everyone else. But I'm just quietly turning into this guy. I'm documenting my calories in my app every day to see what I'm eating. And I'm recognizing how I'm not eating nearly enough calories. I go a day, 900 calories. When sustained, I need about 1,600, right? I need almost twice that, right? But I'm turning into the guy who is calorie counting, calorie watching, making sure where he's getting his calories from, and all that stuff, which is a huge change for me, but also amazing to see, and also a very pivotal part of my evolution in becoming the best version of myself, right? The best version of myself includes being the most healthy I can be physically, right? And we're talking about this because we talked about our evolution in 4 ways: mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. I worked on the mental, worked on the emotional, working on the spiritual, and the only thing that I was dragging my feet with was the physical. So now this is in alignment. I'm working on the physical. I talk so bad about this holistic group I'm in because all they care about is physical health, but I'm glad I recognized where they were dropping the ball, which made me turn the mirror on myself and recognize where I was dropping the ball. Sherry, I'm so glad to have you here as always. You know I appreciate you and love you. You know the throuple ain't the throuple without you. Toddy is on TikTok, and I know you probably can't see her, but she says what's up. I'm saying it ahead of time. And Sarah, I'm glad you could join us for a little bit. I think we're having a great discussion, so hopefully you can, both of you, Sherry and Sarah, and everybody else, hopefully you can get something that resonates with your spirit, or at least be able to recognize how ego moves within other people that you're interacting with, so that you won't be responding to their ego in wild ways. Todd. Sherry said, hey, okay. Yeah, that's crazy. So the heart signs on the screen is for you, Sherry. Well, I don't know why Facebook comments don't come up on the screen. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. All right. So now we're going to move into our review of what we've been discussing. We've been discussing ego in a functional way. The ego and the idea that we know it as, with healthy ego, weak ego, wounded ego, and inflated ego. One of the major things that I found out is how often inflated ego shows up. Inflated ego's purpose is to protect a wounded ego. So when you are hurt or wounded, there is a high chance that you are functioning in an inflated ego in response to those hurts or those wounds that you may have had. So what we did last week was ask ourselves some questions to be able to see how, or assess how we are navigating between these egos, right? We went through inflated ego first. We asked ourselves questions like, do I assume I would do things better? than others in most situations. And we use that example of if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. That is an example of an inflated ego. It is a niche, a cliche that we say, and it makes sense to everybody functioning in an inflated ego, which was me. I thought that. I ain't like group projects, so it was easy for me to say you want it done right, got to do it yourself. It took a lot of work for me to be able to let that go, to allow people to do it and respect that they'll do it right in their own way. Leadership helped me with that. We asked ourselves questions like, do I explain, justify, or shift blame instead of simply owning my mistakes, right? Do you try to justify the mistake you made? Even if you have good intentions, you don't want the person to feel bad and you're still trying to justify when we should just be owning our mistake. That is an inflated ego. Do I generally try to understand others' experiences or just evaluate them? Then we moved into the wounded ego, asking ourselves questions such as, what kind of criticism hurts me the most and why? That's a way to be able to find out your wounded ego, right? So if you got some ego wounds, you can best believe inflated ego is somewhere around the corner, because inflated ego is there to protect the wounded ego, right? Do I replay situations in my mind over and over? Are you an overthinker? Because that overthinking is a sign that you are functioning in a wounded ego. We moved on to weak ego. Asking ourselves questions like, do I avoid difficult situations because I feel like they're too much? Can I sit in discomfort, or do I need to escape it? Some of those are questions that help us be able to assess if we're functioning in a weak ego. Weak ego and wounded ego are very different. Go back and watch some of the previous episodes on ego, and we'll get into the differences between wounded ego and weak ego, but they are barely different. And we stopped at healthy ego. So this week, we're going to start with healthy ego before we move into identity-based ego, or ego in a spiritual sense, and how it functions in our life. We're moving from the functional to the spiritual, so we can recognize how it functions in our life on both levels, right? But now, again, we're starting with questions to be able to assess how we function within a healthy ego. Are we functioning within a healthy ego? Hey, whoop, 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 whoop. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. So, the universe has a way of connecting me with people again. So when we cross paths again, I'll make sure to sign it, right? And I appreciate your support, because I know you bought it because of the love and value you have for me. And I want you to know that love and value is mutual. I appreciate you in more ways than my words can ever convey, right? So first question we can ask ourselves to see if we are functioning within a healthy ego is, when I feel triggered, do I check if my interpretation is accurate? Right. So I heard this quote. Somebody said that their therapist says this, and I 100% agree with this idea. And especially when it comes to feelings. Again, we understand emotions are natural, and each word creates an emotion. They have an emotion or energy attached to that. And feelings are the things that are the stories that we tell ourselves about emotions, right? About the feelings, about the emotions that we feel, right? So in saying that, this quote kind of just sticks with me, and it's perfect for this question, where we say feelings are valid. They just may not be accurate. We can feel things and they are valid. The story that we told ourselves is a very valid story, but it may not be accurate, which ties into this point. Do I check if my interpretation is accurate, right? I've gotten better with that. Generally, I trusted myself or overly trusted myself, and that ego show up and I wouldn't recognize it. But now I'm in a space where I do consciously pause, right? I don't just impulsively respond, right? And one of the ways I wind up checking to see if my interpretation is accurate is using the family, the soul family, the people that I'm connected to. That's why this evolution and healing is a communal journey, because there are going to be those that help you. And I'll call my friends that are on this journey or that are also spiritual guides, and I'll ask them their opinion, and they'll let me know if I'm being realistic, if I'm being unrealistic. They'll give me some idea on if my interpretation is accurate. So, do you pause and check to see if your interpretation is accurate, right? We don't want to be, we learned about those ego defense mechanisms, whether it's rationalization, whether it's projection, or any of the other ones. We just want to make sure that we are responding to an accurate interpretation and not just based on our feelings or our stories that we tell ourselves alone. Next, ask yourself, do I know what I am feeling, or do I just feel attached or triggered? That is a tough question, right? Because initially, when we started this journey, I would confidently have said yes, right? But I recognize that then that yes would have been based on the limited emotions or feelings that I allow myself to experience. So I put feelings and emotions in a box. So the feelings and the stories that I told myself were also limited, right? I had this idea where anger was okay, sadness was okay sometimes. You can be content, but don't be too happy, right? It's just weird. So even happiness was put in a box. So I would say yes initially, but that initial yes, and even though it was confident, it was based on limited emotions, right? So now I'm in this space where I've given myself permission to feel the emotions. We are in this space where we've given ourselves permission to feel the spectrum, the whole gambit of emotions. Disappointment, joy, happy, content, sadness, melancholy. All those words create different emotions that affect us, different parts of our body. So now I allow myself to feel the whole spectrum of emotions. We allow ourselves to feel the whole spectrum of emotions, right? So now when I say, do I know what I'm feeling, or do I feel attached? I can honestly say, initially, I feel attached or triggered, right? And that's how I know that there's a feeling, there's an emotion there that I have not identified. The feelings of feeling attached to this idea, this person, this event. The attachment lets me know that there's some emotions or some feelings there that I have yet to identify. Or if I'm triggered, and I'm honest with myself with triggered, that trigger lets me know that there are emotions there and feelings that I have yet to identify. And that's where I take some time with self, whether I do prayer, meditation, reach out to the community, or something to help me identify these emotions and feelings. And some of them are new, or even not even new, but so long forgotten that I have not allowed myself to feel these things that I forgot what they feel like when I feel them. What energy that word creates, right? So in a healthy ego, do you know what you are feeling? Can you identify what you are feeling, or on the feelings only in the box of attachment and in the box of triggered? So next, you want to ask yourself, do I feel like the same person across different situations, right? As a black man, I say no. And I would go as far as to stretch this to the majority of black people, right? And the reason why I do this is because in our culture, we have this thing that's called code switching. Depending on the place, the people, the thing, the energy, we will shift who we are to fit in that situation, right? And even though this idea of code switching was given to us with the best intentions, it moves us out of a healthy ego, right? I used to be so amazed. No lie, I had a cousin, right? She the same everywhere. And that used to be so amazing to me. She'll cuss you out on her front porch and then go to work and cuss her boss, her supervisor out too. And that used to be so amazing to me. Like, how are you the same person at home that you are at work, that you are on the road? If you have situational behaviors, if how you respond is very context based, you are not functioning in a healthy ego. Because in a healthy ego, you'll be the same person no matter what the environment is, no matter who's in that environment, no matter what you were taught, right? So for that, I would have to say no. And I'd extend that to my people because of this idea around code switching, which you all are taught very young, right? So, do you feel like the same person across different situations, right? If you feel good, share that in the comments and we'll discuss it a little bit. Next, can I maintain boundaries without guilt or aggression? Can you maintain boundaries without guilt or aggression? And for that is still somewhat of a struggle for me. I've moved a little bit beyond the aggression, right? So maintaining boundaries, because we talked about this, we have our boundaries so close to our limits where when somebody crosses a boundary, they're also crossing our limits, and we respond as though they have crossed our limits. But when we move that boundary away from our limits, all that space in between is the space for healing. So when our boundaries was close to our limit, we didn't give any space for healing, any space for misunderstanding, any space for connection. All we thought is disconnect. And I would uphold those boundaries with aggression. And aggression isn't always physical aggression. It is emotional aggression. It is spiritual aggression. It is ghosting. It is checking out, disconnecting. All of those things are aggressive things that are not physically aggressive, right? So I recognize that I've worked on that boundary as it relates to aggression, maintaining my boundaries as it relates to aggression, as I move those boundaries away from my limits, right? But the other part of that question is guilt. I still struggle with the guilt of upholding a boundary, right? And I know that stems from those childhood experiences where you tried to create boundaries for yourself and people wouldn't either respect that boundary or they would emotionally manipulate you into doing what they want you to do. And I didn't recognize that till I got older, and we started this process here. At me being in my 40s, I didn't recognize that until we started this process within the last 3 years, right? So I still sometimes feel guilty. I have to talk it out with my spiritual friends. I have to talk it out with my soul family. I have to talk it out with my friends, because that guilt still shows up from boundaries. Like sometimes I wind up worrying if I hurt the person more. Or was that the right thing to do? And I move into that space where I'm overthinking, which is a wounded ego? Wounded ego idea. So I do know that that's a space and an area that still needs growth. So again, ask yourself, can you maintain boundaries without guilt or aggression? When you have healthy boundaries, when we worked together to create these healthy boundaries. We did that because healthy boundaries do not need continuous enforcement. They resonate through your energy, right? And I see this really a bunch. We talked about this, and we got the knowledge of it, but now I'm living it to get the wisdom so I can get the understanding. I see this tremendously around drinking, right? When I tell people I don't drink, they feel all types of things. And it's always funny to me because these are just my boundaries. And I don't have to enforce them. Like once people see you not drinking, they don't press me. They don't ask any other questions. A lot of times they internalize me not drinking as a reflection of them drinking, which I don't care. Cause you ask me December, I'd have been like, pull up, let me get another drink. So now this is something new for myself, but I do see how it creates emotions in other people, right? Next, is my inner voice supportive, critical, or extreme? That inner voice is that internal dialogue you have with self. That internal dialogue is reflective on how you feel about yourself. So when you have that internal dialogue, that internal conversation, that internal thought process is that voice that you hear when you are talking to yourself about yourself. Is it critical, extreme, or supportive, right? So mine used to be extreme. I'm not even gonna lie. Used to be extremely extreme. That voice, no lie. I talked about it. I woke up one day when doing that shadow work and seeing how dark I actually can get. As a Pisces, I got 1 foot in the light and 1 foot in the dark. I needed to know how dark I can get. I remember waking up one time and I was like, you know what? I'm probably going to have to kill that person. I'm going to probably have to unalive those people. That is extreme. Or when I talked about my road rage, I told that story about me going to the barbershop, and I told my barber I probably should have got out the car. And he was like, no, that's crazy. They probably wrote down your tag. That voice used to be extreme. Or I'd be like, nah, I gotta work harder, run harder. Or sometimes that voice would be so extreme that when the difficulties show up, my voice would be like, quit. Right? So I moved so far from the extreme, right? Now, when we talked about how we talk about ourselves. The words we use to describe ourselves. The one we talked about a lot was crazy, right? So you can be a humorous person. People think you funny. You think you funny. And people will be like, you so crazy. To the point where when you talk about yourself, you have that internal dialogue. You use that word crazy, but crazy has an energetic attachment to it already. So as you may be calling yourself crazy as a variation of humorous, the spirit does not interpret it like that. The spirit interprets crazy, humorous as humorous, right? So once we started looking at the words we use when we're talking to ourselves, I paid more attention. So now when saying I'm crazy, I'll be like, I'm funny. I'm hilarious. I'm humorous. That language began more supportive. Now I'll be like, when I experience failure, I make sure I tell myself, man, it's all right, Anthony. You can do it again. When there was one time where that voice would be critical, I still work on this area right here. That internal dialogue can still be critical. I have such high expectations for myself that when I don't achieve those expectations, I can still be self-critical. So for you, is that internal dialogue supportive, critical, or extreme, or any variation or combination of the three, right? Lastly, when I feel threatened, do I distort reality, collapse internally, or stay grounded? Distort reality, change the facts to feel good about what's happening. Collapse, detach. We use this example. I use this all the time because these people are everywhere wearing their detachment as a badge. I haven't dated in 10 years. I haven't dated in 15 years. All of that is because your body has interpreted a natural thing like dating as a threat, and you have collapsed internally. Or do you stay grounded? You just take it as a part of life. Something that happens, that we all experience and we all overcome. So when you feel threatened, do you distort reality, collapse internally, or stay grounded? Let me know. Share with the family. Okay. So now we can move into ego types in spiritual and personal growth. These are the identity-based egos. They move beyond weak ego, inflated ego, wounded ego, and what is it? Healthy ego. Moves beyond that into a space of how we navigate ego as an identity and spiritually as personal growth, right? So this spiritual and personal growth ego describes where your identity is anchored. We did a whole series on identity. If you want to catch up, you can go back. I think the next book, I've already set up the next book. I've already got it formulated. I'm putting the words together and all that stuff. The next book is going to be about identity. Identity was a great series for us. I really enjoyed it. We really learned a lot about identity. So go check that out. But this describes where your identity is anchored. It changes from behavior to be about who I believe I am. If we're moving from what I do, that are ego mechanisms, to who I am. That is the spiritual based identity. Spiritual based ego, right? Now, when we're talking about this, it can be both helpful, it creates function and structure, or distort and creates attachment and suffering, right? And we learned a lot about suffering, and many of our suffering would be a little bit less if we respected the 12 universal laws and understand that what goes up must come down. It's all a part of life, right? So, first, the first ego we discuss when we're thinking about the identity-based or spiritual-based ego will be the one that many people get stuck and frozen in. And it becomes, they use that rationalizing ego, that defense mechanism, that rationalizing ego to defend that they are stuck in survival. So the first one is survival ego, right? So survival ego, basically, it's the ego that keeps you alive mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. It addresses all four bodies. So survival ego generally is not a negative thing. It's a neutral thing. How we function in it moves us from neutral. And those things can be seen as good or bad. So survival ego generally forms in our early years of our childhood and is driven by self-preservation, safety, and basic needs, which the basic needs are food, clothing, and shelter. Just three simple ones: food, clothing, shelter. And I always question this idea of shelter. I mean, not shelter, but food, because supposedly, not food, but clothing, because supposedly there was a time in our existence where we were able to live naked and free. So, is clothing a basic need? In today's time, yes. So basic needs, food and clothing and shelter. There's driven by self-preservation, a sense of safety, because that sense of safety can be a false sense of safety, and basic needs, right? So first, it has three core functions, three major ways that it winds up functioning. It's physical survival. Physical survival is food, you feel safe, you feel rested, and protected from danger. That is physical survival. That is what the survival ego winds up helping you do. It also functions in emotional survival, and it protects against rejection, abandonment, humiliation, shame. And what's very important about this is the brain interprets these things as threats, not just your feelings. So your feelings are second to how your brain processes. By the time you get to the space of telling yourself story, your brains have already processed it to give you information to tell this story. So it interprets these things, rejection, abandonment, humiliation, shame, as literal threats and danger. So they're not just feelings that you feel, but your psychology, your body, your spirit is responding to these threats as danger, right? It interprets things like criticism feels like danger. Being ignored feels like being abandoned. And failure feels like loss of worth. That actually helped me understand the issues I've had with being ignored. We talked about it last week. I used to hate being ignored as a kid, right? But now I recognize one of the reasons I hate being ignored, or when I'm dealing with other people and they're questioning me about being ignored, is because I recognize now that my emotional survival, my survival ego has kicked in, and it is interpreting being ignored like abandonment. We are misinterpreting some of these experiences and responding based on that misinterpretation, right? The next thing it supports us psychologically, the psychological survival, which is our spiritual and our mental survival, right? It says, I must protect who I believe I am in order to feel safe, right? So I'll never forget. I think I shared this story. This is a perfect sign of my survival ego showing up. Sitting with a friend, and one of the women in the group said, Peanut, one day you gonna be a good man, but you ain't it today. And I lost my I called them a lot of different names. And they just sat there and took it because they knew I wasn't functioning in myself. They knew what they said was true. And they knew my ego showed up. So they didn't get caught up in my ego battle, right? So, or if you find yourself in one of them situations, we have that a lot of time as children with our parents. We'll go to our parents and say something to them. And they don't remember none of that. They don't remember all the times they whooped us for minor things because they are defending who they think they are, right? So if you had that conversation with someone and they're just totally denying it, or they're just not remembering it, or if you're that person where somebody comes to you and you deny it or you don't recall it, that is a sign that your survival ego has shown up because it must protect who you believe you are. It doesn't have to be true. I thought I was a good man. I thought I was a good parent. And I'm going to defend that. Whether now good does not mean perfect. I can still be a good man, but I'm not a perfect man. So that means I made mistakes and acceptance of that. I can still be a good parent. That does not mean I'm a perfect parent. Because as a parent, you make mistakes. If you're raising children, you know how easy it is to make a mistake. You live, you pray, you do a bunch of things to try to avoid making those mistakes, right? The psychological part of the survival ego, it builds your identity around roles, beliefs, behaviors, and coping mechanisms, and then defends them. Like I said, with that good guy, good parent, or even our coping mechanisms when we spaz out on people or we ghost people, we justify those things because it's a part around our identity, and it's our survival ego showing up to protect us from perceived threats, the real or imagined, no matter what it is. So now the survival ego pretty much asks one core question. And that question is, am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Right? And to answer that question, it uses automatic threat detection. One thing it does is uses automatic threat detection even when there is no real threat, right? So we've talked about how, as humans, we have a tendency to confuse the familiar with safe. So because it's familiar with us, we'll think it's safe. And anything that is unfamiliar becomes dangerous, right? So that automatic threat detection kicks in even when there is no real threat. So things that are good for us are not a threat, but we interpret them as a threat. It constantly scans for danger, rejection, instability, and uncertainty. Two examples I wound up thinking about while I was preparing for the show is this idea. I'll never forget. I can't remember. It might have been, it ain't Bronx Tale. I forget which one of them old mob movies that I watched. And they had this, I think it's The Godfather. It's one of them. It might be Godfather 2. Keep it real. This idea of you don't sit with your back to the door, right? That comes from this idea that survival ego is constantly automatic threat detection and constantly scans for danger, rejection, instability, and uncertainty, even when there is none there. So sitting with your back to the door seems like a normal behavior, but how often has that idea been challenged? How often have you sat in a restaurant and something happened and you ain't see the person come in. It doesn't happen that often. It does happen. But it doesn't happen often enough where we need to make it a part of our daily routine, where we're stuck in this survival ego or this idea, which is funny because this is one of the things that I said about practicing dating. A man walking on the outside, just in case a car jumps the curve, right? I'll be forgetting about that because I just be living life. But how often do cars jump the curve and run people over? It doesn't happen that often. It happens. This does not say that it doesn't happen, but it is to say it is not a threat that is always there, where we need to function like this threat is happening all the time. So even some of this survival ego is attached to the roles that we have as men and women. As a man, I'm supposed to always walk on the side. So this idea keeps me stuck in survival ego. Just because it's attached to a role or idea that identifies or describes manhood. But whose description, right? Why are we holding on to this? How often have you walked down the street and you seen, not you get hit, but you've seen this happen? If you have, I bet it hasn't been more than once in your life. Is that enough to live your life stuck in survival ego? No, it is not. Right. Also, the survival ego creates defense strategies. It's to fight, control, dominate, argue, flight, avoid, escape, procrastinate, freeze, shut down, dissociate, numb, or fawn. People please. What do we talk about? Fight, flight, fright, fawn. That's what the survival ego is in control of, those mechanics that we talk about all the time, right? Two, it unconsciously become in addressing this, when you're stuck in survival ego, this is another sign that you're stuck in survival ego, because unconsciously you will become an achiever to avoid failure, or the nice one to avoid rejection. Many people have become nice, people pleasing, just to avoid rejection. The strong one to avoid vulnerability. We see this a lot with loss. People think that dealing with loss is being strong. And that's just to avoid vulnerability. Or you become the invisible one. I always hear this when you hear people like, I just kind of like to play the back. I don't like to be on Front Street. I don't like to be the person that's in the center of the stage, right? That is a sign that we are functioning in a survival ego, and we become the invisible one just to avoid judgment, right? It's important to say that these behaviors, these things that we think about ourselves, are not evidence of who we are. They are adaptive identities. Those are identities that we grabbed onto to adapt. And we talked about healthy ego functions consistently. You're the same person across circumstances. But when we become these people and we allow them to become the whole of our identity, we don't give ourselves space to recognize that they are not who we are at all. They are just adaptive identities that we took on to navigate situations in our lives, right? Now, the paradox of survival ego is kind of like the happiness paradox, what we talked about. Those people who chase happiness are the least happy people, because they're sending a signal to the universe that they don't have happiness. Instead of having some contentment, some joy for what they already have so that they can get more, abundance comes from being thankful for what you already have. Be thankful for what you got. So this winds up creating a paradox. So survival ego creates a paradox just like happiness does, right? And it often creates the limitations that we are trying to escape, right? So we want it, we use it to protect us from pain, rejection, or vulnerability. And what it winds up creating is fear, avoidance, and stagnation. All things that we don't want either. That is the paradox of being stuck in survival. It creates the environment that we want to escape. That's survival ego. The next ego we're going to discuss, and it will be the last ego for tonight. Where's my water? Is the image or status ego. Image or status ego. The image, the status ego is built to manage how we are perceived by others. It is our reputation. And I love to say my reputation shows up before me, precedes me, right? Shows up before me. So that is based on image, status, ego. My image, status, ego, right? And is to manage how you are perceived by others. It asks, how am I seen? Not am I safe like survival, but how am I seen, right? How do people see me? It's generally formed after the survival is secured. So once survival, basic survival is secured, then we start moving into the image, right? It's shaped by culture, family expectations, and social feedback, and builds the identity around roles, reputation, success, and comparison. We'll go a little bit into that in a second. So it has three core functions, right? The first core function of the status image ego is social belonging. As human beings, we don't just need to survive. We need to belong. And I remember in psychology class, we had a whole discussion around some people's need to belong is their strongest need. That's how we have things like gangs. That need to belong is their strongest need. Thus, some of the reasons why some people join the military. The need to belong. That's why some people graduate from college. The need to belong. We're in the group. That's why some people pledge fraternities or sorority. The need to belong is high. So, social belonging. We go beyond just survival and we start addressing our need to belong. It asks, am I accepted? Do I fit in? Right? It protects us from social rejection that the brain interprets as a threat. Rejection is seen as a threat, and our ego will respond to it. Not that it's a normal thing that happens, but it's that it is a threat when we function in our need to belong. Next thing, the next core function is identity formation. It is the image ego. It is the status ego. So it does have a function in helping you shape your identity. It is not the sole descriptor of your identity, right? So it builds your identity, your external identity, which influences your internal identity. It does this through our job titles. That's why some people love to lead with their career. It does this through our personal labels. That's why we have people talking about things like, I'm an empath, right? That functions in this image, how they want to be perceived by people. They'll do behaviors that align with that as well. It is It is shaped through our achievements or our lack thereof, right? And through our social roles. Next, the core function is status and or positioning, right? It organizes your place on the hierarchy. And it's funny because I was just talking to my homeboy, my college roommate, not too long ago, and I low key said I miss one thing I miss about school is that right there, that social hierarchy. It let us know where we stood in life, about where we were in the classes, where we were in school. And I also talked about how those gifted classes are just the other end of the classes for the people that has developmental issues. We are on that spectrum. We have all the same issues. Just people may have overlooked some of our other issues because we made good grades. But that is the same spectrum of intelligence. We're talking about intelligence and how we function in it, right? So when we're thinking about the hierarchy, it winds up letting us know we're higher versus lower, better versus worse, or winning versus losing. And it is essentially asking us, where do I stand when compared to others? When I look at other people, peers, people older than us, people younger than us, how we look when we just look at others, we start gauging where we stand in comparison to those others, right? How it winds up being formed, we'll go a little bit deeper into that, is feedback from others help shape our image ego. That feedback from others, is it praise or is it criticism, right? I know mine wound up doing a lot of work of being shaped, searching for more praise, right? And that was partly because I focused hardly on the criticisms, that when I would get the praise, if it wasn't the praise that it wasn't the praise coming from who I wanted it to come from, then that praise was not enough. What you see today? What was I talking about that you saw today, Toddy? Let me clarify. I need to say like ding, so bing, so when I see that come up, I know you saying something so I can address it. What you see today? What are we talking about? So it forms through feedback from others outside, praise or criticism. It's shaped through gate being on the other end of the spectrum. Oh, you saw somebody talking about that? That's what's up. Congratulations. I thought I made that up in my own big brain. So good to know other people are thinking about me, thinking about it like that as well. And you might have to share that with me. And it's funny, gate, gifted and talented. That's hilarious. It is shaped through social comparison. These social comparisons come from, okay, no doubt. Send it to me. I'll look at it. I guess that's better than I'm thinking about the video I said what dude was using sage to get rid of the spirits and he passed out. That thing was hilarious to me. But you gotta really use sage to be able to fully enjoy that. You know what I mean? To cleanse the air, cleanse the energy around you. So it's hilarious. So you trying to cleanse yourself from bad energy and you the one pass out. You the bad energy. So forgive me. That's hilarious to me because I use sage on other people. But surprisingly, I ain't passed out yet. So I must be all right, right? Sage don't work on me. So that social comparison comes from siblings. That's where this idea of sibling rivalry comes from. That's where this idea of siblings feel like the parents care for one person, care for the other sibling a little bit more or a little bit less. That's from that social comparison. That social comparison is peers, which I just used as school. School allows us to be able to socially compare ourselves with our peers in the same age group. So school and work environments all help to allow us to do social comparison. It also is formed through conditional acceptance. Conditional acceptance. So contrary to popular belief, love is conditional. It does come with conditions. Even when we talk about God and he gave unconditional love, he had conditions to his love. There is a certain way he expected you to live. Now, the forgiveness may be unconditional, but the love had requirements. Regardless on what people say, there are certain things that you needed to do, like love your neighbor, right? There are certain behaviors that we needed to do. So it's conditional acceptance. Love or approval is tied to performance, behavior, and or image. Now, again, this can be our perception. It doesn't necessarily have to be true. I felt like the best way to be loved is by actually achieving things. So I wanted to be the best in a lot of things. And I didn't want to quit because conditional acceptance. I didn't want to necessarily lose the love if I wind up quitting or something like that. So it is tied to your performance, behavior, and or image. Now, how does this operate? How does it operate? What are we doing? The status ego, the image ego, how does it operate? It asks, what do people think about me again? It uses, okay, I know that's right. I think a lot of us had to come to terms with conditional love. And I think that really kind of, we had to have these conversations with ourselves and others when it really came around our boundaries and our limits, right? So we taught this idea of unconditional love. So we want to be able to be that person that gives unconditional love. But healthy love has requirement. It has expectations. I talked about the conversation where I went out, I was talking with a friend, and they were talking about how they want a man that's just gonna kiss their butt. And I said, I got expectations on how I'm gonna be treated. There's a certain way that I expect to be treated if you want me in your life. I have taken on strongly and held on tightly to the conditions that come with love, right? It should, and it's okay. So we had to give ourselves permission to be able to attach conditions to our love because it is healthy. That is healthy. It's a good thing to do, right? So it operates by using comparison loops. We are always constantly, it's normal. It is natural to compare ourselves. Am I better or worse? Am I ahead or behind? The wild thing about it is it has a tendency to create this false self. Many of us don't know who we are because all we have is these adaptive identities and weird conditions or no conditions at all. So it gives a false sense of self. It builds a version of us that is acceptable, impressive, and socially safe. I remember this is one thing, I ain't even gonna lie, as we have this discussion, I'm recognizing how I created a false sense of self. It used to be amazing to me because I'm not a huge guy. But there are certain rooms that I walk in and people will be scared to death of me. No lie, I used to work with Toddy and hired this woman. And she can bear witness. I won't say her name, but she knows what I'm talking about. I hired her to be a supervisor. And every single time I walked in the room with this lady in the room, she would clam up. Like I came in the room to unalive everybody in there. I'm about to take everybody out. Or like I just had this aggressive and angry energy. And she used to say, I'm scary. And everybody used to be like, he ain't scared, girl. Don't be worrying about him. But you could not convince this lady that I was not a threat, right? And it was wild because that's how she perceived me, right? So and she's just an extreme example, but I've endured this on many different ways. So I consciously had to create a false self that was acceptable. Excuse me, acceptable. I'm stuck on that word, chewed up on it. Impressive, and specifically socially safe. People had to be safe, felt safe when I entered the room. As I became Soul Swami, and that became listen, what we not gonna do is co-sign or her being scared of me. Why would you say that I'm kind of scary? What is scary? I mean, people still respond to me like I'm like, and I still like, yo, I ain't gonna eat you. Even as I cultivated this acceptable, socially safe person, that still ain't enough. And then some people, because they're used to chaos, the safety inside of me or the safety in my energy feels like danger. Their brain interprets it as a threat, right? So I've seen that even in my Reiki, people be so scared to let go sometimes. That be their own little battle. But it's amazing to me. So why would you say that I am kind of scary? Dead serious. you not the only one. So and normally I give you a hard time, but you are not the only one. I ain't gonna let you carry that burden by yourself. A lot of people be scared of me, and I still don't get it to this day, but I respect it, right? So the paradox of the image ego is it tries to give you security through validation from your compliment, other people, your comparisons, things like that, but creates instability through dependence. It tries to give you acceptance, respect, and worth, but what it winds up creating is insecurity. Comparison, which we know comparison is the thief of joy, and performance pressure. You always have to be this person. I'm sorry. I am laughing at you, Ivy. I ain't even gonna lie, but you don't even got to say. I know why you laughing, and I am laughing not at you. I'm laughing with you. Great times, great times, great times, great times, great times. No lie, great times. But it promises, or it tries to create acceptance, respect, and worth. And what it winds up creating is the insecurity, the comparison, and the performance pressure. That's what it does for you, right? When we're stuck in that space of the status ego. And that is the last ego we're going to talk about tonight. We will move on to a couple of new egos next week. I think we might be doing the doer ego. I can't remember which ones. We only did 2. So we have 5 more spiritual egos that we need to discuss. I know doer is one. So that's the person that always just got to do something, can't sit still. Rest seems like something is wrong. So we'll do a little bit more on that. We'll start covering some more of the other 5 spiritual egos. I hope to have you Thursday, where we'll continue reading Changeling by Victor LaValle. I'm enjoying the book. Again, I'm biased because I love the show on Apple TV. And unfortunately, they only did that 1 season. I think I complain about this every time I mention this book, but I'm going to keep complaining, and hopefully Apple will hear me, because they didn't cancel it. They just not making it, which is very interesting. But they didn't have season 2, so I get to see what happens in season 2. So I'm so excited. That's book club. You can join us. I'll read to you. We'll be able to continue enjoying Changeling by Victor LaValle on Thursday. If you can't be here Thursday, I don't know what to tell you. No, I'm just kidding. So next week we're gonna be on the road. So we probably won't. When we're on the road, we generally just have general discussions. So we probably won't continue the spiritual ego because I just don't bring my notes and all that stuff with me when I'm traveling. But next Tuesday we will be in Dallas, whoop, 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 Dallas, Texas, right? So all you Cowboy fans, I'll be in your town. If you're Facebook family and you hit me, holla at your boy. I'd love to meet you. If I never met you in person, I'd love to meet you while I'm down in Dallas. Come on out, holla at your boy. I look forward to connecting with you. And same thing for book club next week. We'll be on the road. We may not be able to get book club because that's when I'll be traveling. On Thursday, I'll be traveling back. So I don't know if I'll get home in time for book club. But Tuesday, we'll be on the show, and we're taking this show on the road. So join us then, right? I hope to have you for both shows if you can. But this Thursday, we continue reading Changeling. Next week, we're on the road in Dallas. Again, I thank you, family, for joining. I thank you for sharing your energy as we create this collective of all of us becoming the best versions of ourselves. I thank you for your time. I live in a space of gratitude because you can be anywhere in this world, but you chose to be here with us. And that I say thank you. Before we go, remember, you love yourself and others. You deserve to be loved. You can and do forgive others easily. Your heart is fully open, loving, and pure, and you can follow the voice of your heart. And with that, family, I say thanks again and peace to you.